Chapter 311 The Silent Butcher. The Silent Butcher! The divine priest shouted in fear. The divine priests had long investigated all the powerhouses in the Moonlight Empire. One of the most notable enemies they noticed was Nathan. Nathan was quite famous in the Arcane continent for his silent killings. During one of the virtual trials, Nathan massacred all the participants without even the audience noticing. If not for Nathan, the only remaining participant, the audience wouldn't even know who did the killings. As they said, fear not the fast or powerful knife, but the hidden one. Looking at Nathan, who was slowly walking towards them, they couldn't help but tremble. "I'm not begging?" Nathan muttered emotionlessly. "Ahem. A divine priest shall never kneel," they said forcefully. Although they feared death, the awe they had for their god still prevailed. As divine priests, they represented their god. Them kneeling was equivalent to their god's image being trampled upon. "Then you can die." Suddenly, Nathan disappeared in front of their eyes. The divine priests froze, looking around cautiously. Protect us?" Popo called his subordinates. Unfortunately, they were still being killed by the cosmic behemoth made by the heavenly formation of the Imperial Moon Army. Slash. Suddenly, Popo's head flew, sending the others into despair. "Gapopo! Hans Yeliad." Slash. Then another head belonging to Hans flew. "Gfuck!" Mononov cursed in despair. No matter how alert they were, it seemed that their deaths were already written, and they couldn't do anything about it. All their skills, defense, even their will were frozen. Even the protective treasure given to them by their god seemed to be ineffective. Slash. Soon, another head flew, making the only remaining divine priest, Lut. "It's the end," Nathan muttered coldly. However, as his knife was about to strike, the space seemed to twist, sending his attack into the void. "Ayo? You survived?" Nathan muttered in interest. Since he awakened his physique, no one has ever survived his knife. His special physique is called the Heavenly Death Mark. A heavenly physique that touches the law of death. No matter how strong they are, once they are marked, they are sure to die. It's like a bomb was planted in their head, and he only needed to detonate it. That is why no matter how thick their defense is or even if they possess certain immortality, it was all for naught once their head was separated from their body. Meanwhile, Lut sweated, barely escaping his certain death. "You can't kill me," Lut said coldly, still maintaining the demeanor of a divine priest. It seemed that the protection amulet given by his god was of good quality. By his estimate, this silent butcher shouldn't be able to kill him for a while. He just needed to wait until reinforcements came. After all, this is the territory of the Wessel Empire. That arrogant Emperor Khan would move even if he didn't want to. As for his subordinates? Looking at them being massacred and escaping from the cosmic behemoth, he had already given them up. "I can't kill you?" Nathan smirked as if hearing a funny joke. "Let's see how many lives you have." Slash. 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 Although Lut tried to dodge the attacks, it was useless. Nathan seemed to know the future, anticipating all his movement. Worst of all, unless Nathan willed it, Lut couldn't even see him. Now he could only silently feel the knife, relying on the Tier 9 protection amulet to barely keep his life afloat. Nathan was also like a patient sculptor. No matter how tough the wood was, he would carve it to what he desired. As time passed, there were only less than 10,000 believers remaining. Lut also felt his protection amulet beginning to crack. Looking at the sky, Lut wished to see that arrogant emperor more than his god. At the bridge between his life and death, Lut subconsciously chose to believe in a person other than his god. "I hurry," Lut muttered with all his heart. As if answering his prayers, the sky suddenly changed, as if welcoming a supreme existence. "I'm not good. Retreat." Feeling the danger, Isabella quickly called her troops. Nathan also stopped and looked at Lut coldly. "I'll take your life later." With a pull from Isabella, they quickly disappeared and teleported to the Moonlight Empire. In the Moonlight Empire. What a huge pressure. Isabella muttered fearfully. Just feeling the aura of the coming enemy, Isabella felt unprecedented power that only a Tier 9 Apex sovereign possesses. Is he really that strong, 8th Mother? Nathan asked curiously. He wanted to hack Emperor Khan to see how thick his skin was. He's strong. Probably only Sky could barely match him, Isabella nodded in confirmation. Isabella's special physique is called the Heavenly Imperial Generalissimo. A physique that lets her become stronger with the conjunction of the quality and quantity of her army. Besides, it also grants her the ability to see through everything. As they say, to win a war, you need to know yourself and the enemy. All talents, potentials, strengths, and such can be easily seen by her. Such a unique physique and ability were also the reasons Maximus granted her the title of Field Marshal, the highest rank in the army, second only to the Emperor. What about Dad? How is that Emperor in comparison? With Maximus? The two aren't even in the same dimension. How could they be comparable? Isabella rolled her eyes at Nathan's stupid question. Maximus can kill a Tier 9 Apex Sovereign like killing chickens. Although Emperor Khan should be able to fight and defeat a few Tier 9 Apex Sovereigns at the same time, that was it. Killing and defeating are, after all, different. Defeating an enemy only needs one to be slightly stronger than the opponent. Killing, on the other hand, needs one to overpower the opponent. Hearing Isabella disregard the enemy's strength like garbage, Nathan laughed. Ha, indeed compared to Dad everyone is trash. On the ruined island of the Wessel Empire, Khan coldly looked around at the devastated land and the remaining people alive. What daring fellows! Attacking the empire where he could come and go wherever he wanted in an instant. Moreover, being able to escape unscathed was a massive achievement. It seems that they were able to guess that something was wrong with me, Khan concluded. Just earlier, another surge of memory was inputted into his mind, delaying him from rescuing the believers of the gods. They even knew the exact time. What a formidable empire! Khan wondered which among those top prodigies was able to conclude his symptoms, leading to such a precise attack. Neo was too low-key, aka too lazy, that people didn't even know his abilities. Many thought that Neo was just a lazy second-generation son who only knew how to eat and sleep. What they didn't know is that he was also an accomplished diviner comparable to those at the top. Soon, the remaining divine priest flew toward him. I greet the Emperor. Lut bowed. Ayo? You're still alive? Khan teased. I'm lucky to have been saved by your majesty, Lut said flatteringly. It's no problem. By the way, your loss this time is huge. The loss of the gods this time is heavy. 3 divine priests and hundreds of thousands of Tier 8 believers just died in a few minutes. Even a god would need a lot of resources to recoup these losses. Indeed, if it hadn't been for your majesty, we wouldn't even be alive today. Just a few seconds longer and Lut would have died. Fortunately, Emperor Khan arrived just in time. As for the other believers, Lut didn't care, they were just disposable pawns. What do you plan to do now? Although the puppets were untouched, the general controlling them was dead. As for the believers of the gods, there were only less than 10,000 remaining. This, we plan to report to the gods before deciding. On behalf of the Almighty God of Shadow, I can only say sorry to your majesty for delaying the war. You shouldn't be able to contact your god. Khan said, sending Lut into confusion. What happened? Did your majesty know something? It's been over a year since the shadow god last answered his prayer. He thought his god was just in seclusion, so he didn't answer. However, listening to Emperor Khan, there should be other reasons. You do not need to worry. It's the business of the gods. How about this? I'll revive the people here and you continue to attack the Moonlight Empire, Khan said calmly. He can't have the war delayed any longer. 3 years is already the maximum. Any longer than that, Khan felt something may happen. Although it's only a premonition, it's better to trust it than let some problem crop up later. However, Khan's calm word sent shock to Lut. Revive? Is it the amalgamation of will? In his cognition, only a god could make a person come back from the dead. Even those mighty apex sovereigns, to revive someone, needed to pay a huge price and satisfy all kinds of conditions. You'll see? Khan smiled lightly. During this time he had been receiving the unknown memories, his mastery of the amalgamation of will reached perfection. Reviving people who just died under the territory of his empire was just a piece of cake. He didn't need to satisfy all kinds of conditions, just the amalgamation of will is enough. Thinking of this, he raised a hand as if sending a divine decree. Arise. Chapter 3:12 The Almighty Emperor. Arise. Suddenly, rain, storms, and all kinds of natural phenomena appeared on the ruined island. Time seemed to reverse as the destroyed island attracted each other like a magnet, forming a complete piece. The trees, rocks, and mountains soon formed again, regaining their former beauty. The stronghold that had just been destroyed returned to its pristine condition as if it were newly built. The believers who were still alive felt their bodies rejuvenated to their peak. Their old injuries, ailments, anything that prevented them from achieving their full potential disappeared like a miracle. Finally, those who died in the rampage of the cosmic behemoth rose from the death, defying the laws of the world. Their bodies were pieced together like a puzzle as their souls and spirits were snatched from the void and put into the newly formed bodies. I can move? I'm still alive? I'm not dreaming? I'm still alive. Oh wow, I'm still alive. Praise the God. Thank you for giving me another life. Praise the Almighty God for giving us another chance to see your glory. Praise the omnipotent God for letting me see this beautiful world again. Noticing that they could move, see, hear, and feel, the crowd cheered as their faith in their God skyrocketed. This time they really felt the power of God. Taking and giving life with ease, like a snap of fingers. No, it's not the gods who granted you another life. Suddenly, a yell brought them back to reality. Looking at the one who dared to shout such presumptuous words, denying the power of gods, they couldn't help but be shocked. Divine Priest! Divine Priest Lut! You're still alive! The believers of the God of Shadow shouted in happiness upon seeing their divine priest still alive. So it's the divine priest of the Shadow God. Why does the divine priest say it's not the gods who granted us additional life? Has the divine priest deviated from divine beliefs and turned into the path of the devil? They couldn't believe that a divine priest himself was the one who disregarded the power of God. It's like hearing a priest who once praised God's omnipotence and goodness suddenly say that God is stupid and evil. Although I hate to admit it, it's His Majesty who granted us additional life. Lut said wryly. His Majesty? The Emperor of the Wessel Empire? They suddenly looked at the man above, watching them playfully as if observing a show. Impossible. How could a mere mortal resurrect us from death? Only the gods could do this. Unlike the knowledgeable divine priests, these believers were ignorant, blindly believing that only their God was almighty and no one else. Although the Emperor of the Wessel Empire was indeed stronger, showing power beyond mortal, they believed it was still a far cry from the God they believed in. Looking at the stubborn fellows, Lut couldn't help but feel a headache. He also just wanted to attribute their resurrection to the miracle of the gods. But seeing the Emperor of the Wessel Empire silently looking at them, Lut felt that if he didn't solve this, they would die here and now. For a man who could snatch them from death, throwing them back was just as easy. Finally, after a few minutes of soft and tough persuasion, the believers somehow believed that the Emperor was the one who resurrected them from death. However, as they looked for their divine priest, doubts emerged. Where is our divine priest? Lut also reacted and noticed the other three were not present. Not finding the answer, they unconsciously looked at the Emperor of the Wessel Empire. Don't you want to see proof? Just wait. Khan lightly smiled. The divine priest and some others died strangely. It seemed that their fate was cut off and even their soul and spirit was shattered. Fortunately, it had only been a few minutes. The shattered fragments of their soul and spirit were still not assimilated by the world. Otherwise, even if he poured all his power into resurrecting them, there would be nothing he could do. Just resurrecting them, Khan needed over 1,000 times more energy than usual. If the time elapsed longer, maybe even the amalgamation of will produced by all of the Wessel Empire would not be enough. If not for wanting to prove his power and boost morale, he wouldn't even waste his energy to resurrect these divine priests. Soon, the people killed by Nathan came back from death, still showing apparent fear on their faces. I'm alive. Aha, what a monster! Even after coming to terms with the fact that they were still alive, the fear they had for Nathan was still imprinted. It seemed that they would die again as long as Nathan saw them. Finally, with some comfort and persuasion, they managed to calm down. The other believers also fully believed that the Emperor of the Wessel Empire was the one who revived them. Looking at their savior, the admiration in their eyes overflowed as their belief in their gods wavered. We thank your Majesty for your grace. We hope you forgive us for our ignorance, not knowing the height of the sky. Hundreds of people bowed, showing their sincerity. As they say, life is the greatest gift. For the one who gave them their second life, all they can offer is their utmost sincerity. To them, the Emperor of the Wessel Empire was like their second parent, their second god, who gave them a chance to see this world again. It's my responsibility to ensure the life of my mighty warriors so they can continue fighting, Khan softly said. We will do our best to fight for your majesty," they shouted. This is their duty to fight. Thus, hearing the emperor acknowledge their bravery, they couldn't help but feel recognized. "I am good. And now it's time to fight back. Destroy the enemy that once killed you. Take back their land and take what is rightfully ours." But your majesty, the enemy's strength," Lut said silently. "Right now, the enemy massively overpowers them. First, the puppets were suppressed by the Moonlight Empire army that they barely able to fight back. As for them, the believers of the three gods, the massacre that just happened proved how fragile they were. Without the Emperor of the Wessel Empire's help, attacking the Moonlight Empire would be suicide. "Don't worry, this time I have your back." Khan smiled slightly. After reaching perfect mastery of the amalgamation of will, his control over it could already change the wind of war to his discretion. The revival of the believers just now was only one of its capabilities. An overwhelming enemy in the face of his immortal army was nothing to fear. 3 months passed by, and the Wessel Empire finished sorting out its internal problems. After almost half a year of chaos, they were ready to march to the Moonlight Empire again. It's been over a year and a half since Maximus disappeared. The premonition Khan had was getting stronger and stronger. Khan even disregarded his contempt for the gods and fully cooperated with them like in the beginning. Whatever they needed, whatever they wanted, all kinds of conditions were approved to accelerate the process of war. The only thing different was the respect and admiration of those believers. They seemed fully integrated into the Wessel Empire, with the Emperor in their utmost hearts. Khan also noticed this and just smiled. Having an instant army that was his own was too good to be true. Sometime in the future, if these people truly wanted to be with him, Khan wouldn't mind disregarding the face of those gods and fully take these believers as his people. As for the citizens of the Wessel Empire, Khan was also helpless. The all-out war started too early. With hundreds of trillions of people, not even a few thousand in his empire reached Tier 7. Tier 7 was barely enough to interfere with the war right now. Unless he had the quantity of the Moonlight Empire, which had hundreds of thousands, if not millions. These people of his who reached Tier 7 couldn't be used in the war. The amalgamation could only get them this far in a short period of time. As for using quantity-type weapons of war like the arcane cannons of the Moonlight Empire, Khan was also helpless. He was not as rich and resourceful as Maximus. His connections were limited, such that even if he had money, no one would sell him a thing. Thinking of the Moonlight Empire, which had thousands of Tier 8 powerhouses and millions of people who reached Tier 7, Khan couldn't help but feel a bit jealous. Fortunately, he had these stupid and cute believers of the gods under him. Hundreds of thousands of Tier 8 powerhouses and billions of Tier 8 puppets. With the cooperation of the amalgamation of will, the Moonlight Empire would surely be finished this time. As for their trump cards and whatnot, they were all fragile under his immortal army. Let's see how long you can last this time. Chapter 313 Immortal Army Marches. In the military outpost, Isabella was conducting a meeting with various officials and generals of the Empire. "Are you sure, Neo?" "Yes, the Emperor of the Wessel Empire should move this time. The enemy should also fully utilize the amalgamation of will. As for its abilities, you should already know," Neo said lazily. Perhaps even if the world were destroyed in front of him, Neo would only think it's bothersome. Unless his family were in the face of death, only then Neo's face would change. Neo already made multiple calculations about it. No matter how many calculations he made, the fate of the death in his family never appeared. This war would only affect the Empire at most. As for their fate, whether it's victory or death, Neo didn't care. He and his family had already done their best. If it still gets destroyed, that's only because the empire his father created is weak and fragile. However, others who heard what Neo had said had different expressions. There was gloominess, a bit of confidence, and a hint of expectation. For the generals and officials born in the empire, this is their home. They had no other choice but victory. Losing was not an option. As for Maximus' wives, as much as possible, they wanted the Moonlight Empire to win the war. This is the place their husband had set up with blood and sweat. They didn't want it to get destroyed just because he was not here. Finally, after a bit of contemplation, Isabella looked around. First, test the strength of the enemy. If there is not much change, then we continue as it is. If there is a change, retreat immediately. We can't have more losses than it is. Isabella had to admit that even with all kinds of trump cards, the Moonlight Empire had no chance of winning. It's not the puppets, the believers of gods, or even the unknown reinforcement of the enemy. No matter how strong they were, they couldn't possibly reach the realm of Tier 9 Apex Sovereign. With the trump card Maximus prepared, killing those who didn't reach Apex would be nothing. However, after seeing the Emperor of the Wessel Empire, Isabella's confidence in winning is shattered. The enemy is not something they can fight head-on. Even 1 or 2 Apex Sovereigns aren't enough for that kind of anomaly. Without Maximus, the only thing they can do now is to preserve. Preserve until he can return. On the border of the Moonlight Empire, hundreds of thousands of ships were still on high alert, scanning for the slightest hint of the enemy. Although it's been almost half a year since the last clash between the two empires, they still vividly remembered all the tragedies and casualties that it caused. "When do you think the Wessel Empire would attack us, Captain?" "I don't know, but it should be soon," Captain Kirk replied worriedly. As a captain, he was already informed that one of these days, the enemy would come to attack. Not only was the enemy more in quantity, but it was also stronger than it ever was. Although he didn't know where the Empire got its information, Kirk knew one thing: this time it was the fight of life and death. Either the Moonlight Empire emerges victorious or is destroyed from history. Soon, the army of the Wessel Empire slowly marches to the Moonlight Empire. The two massive empires are divided by a vast sea ranging hundreds of trillions of kilometers. For a Tier 8 powerhouse, such a distance could be quickly reached in just a week or two. Looking at the empire in front of them, the believers of gods who just reached the border of the Moonlight Empire smiled. "So this is the land that we would conquer? Such a small, tiny land, not even reaching a tenth of the Wessel Empire? Antonio, you've been battling with the Moonlight Empire for years. What can you say? Don't ever underestimate this little empire," Antonio said seriously. Antonio, who had just been resurrected, still had some fear of the unknown Moonlight Empire. In the years they fought, there was not one time he felt he was winning. Every time he gained the upper hand, the Moonlight Empire would show strength just enough to crush him. Even with Emperor Khan's reinforcement, Antonio was unsure if they could defeat the Moonlight Empire. "Ha ha ha, it seems you still have trauma with the Moonlight Empire. If you're this cowardly, you should get out of here and let others control the puppets." "That's right. A cowardly person has no room in this war. What are you fearful about? His Majesty already guaranteed that we would never die." Unlike Antonio, although they also died in the surprise attack of the Moonlight Empire, they didn't sustain any trauma to their death. Although it hurts and is very scary to die, once they knew that they could be resurrected again, there would no longer be such fear. "You don't understand." Antonio sighed, not knowing how to refute them. Antonio would also like to back out of this war like the 3 priests who returned to the Divine Continent. Unfortunately, because he was the one who experienced the most of what the Moonlight Empire is, Antonio had to attend and lead this messed-up battle, regardless of whether he liked it or not. As for the trauma, Antonio didn't know why, but even with a guarantee of resurrection from the Emperor of the Wessel Empire, Antonio felt his life hanging by a thread, only waiting for the devil to cut it out. In the Moonlight Empire border, Johnson quickly instructed the Navy to be in formation as he saw the sightings of the enemy. This time, the enemy should be stronger. Always be alert for changes and wait for my instructions. "Yes, General Johnson," the captains of each ship replied. Soon, the enemy reached the range of the arcane cannons. "Fire!" A salvo of condensed energy quickly bombarded the enemy. As the smoke faded, the captains saw little to no damage to the enemy. "Huh? They are more durable? Did the puppets receive an upgrade?" Looking at the puppet who became stronger. Instead of fear, the people of the Moonlight Empire became more excited, feeling a new challenge. It doesn't matter if you become stronger. If you only have this strength, you will be finished. In these half a year, it's not only the enemy who became stronger. Half a year is plenty of time for an individual to increase strength. Especially blessed by the amalgamation of will and almost unlimited resources. There is no stopping the people, especially the soldiers of the Moonlight Empire, from improving their strength. In the past, only about 10 billion Tier 6 soldiers were in the army. However, after half a year, all the 100 billion members of the Navy reached Tier 6. The number of Tier 7 powerhouses has also increased by leaps and bounds. From about 1 million, now a whopping 100 million people have reached the Tier 7 realm. With more people in power, the arcane cannons also increased from hundreds of thousands to tens of millions. Now, each ship had at least 100 arcane cannons. Furthermore, with more experience, the operation of the arcane cannons became faster and easier. Instead of a 2 to 3 second firing time, the arcane cannons could now be fired in a second. Looking at the haughty enemy marching, taking their first salvo like pebbles thrown by children, the soldiers of the Moonlight Empire just smiled. Let them taste the fear of firepower. Men, it's time to show why one should never attack the Moonlight Empire. Fire! With the order from Johnson, the captains didn't hold back any longer and fired at will. It didn't matter if the enemy didn't receive much damage. Even a spit could drown a person. Much less the concentration of firepower from 100 billion army. Boom! 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 Like a surging sea, the enemy stopped abruptly as if encountering an invisible wall. The puppets in front fell like flies encountering poison. Even Sam didn't let the puppets take action, looking at the enemy drowned in the firepower barrage. Damn, this is insane! Ha ha ha, what a weak puppets! Is this what ultimate firepower is about? As they watched the enemy falling like flies, they felt as though they were cheating. Alright, concentrate. This is just the beginning. Meanwhile, Antonio, seeing the puppet army fall like flies, was still calm. Push harder and faster. Antonio ordered calmly. Instead of ordering the puppets to spread, dispersing the enemy's firepower, Antonio ordered the puppet to push harder as if wanting to let them die faster. Even his subordinates paused a little, not understanding the command. However, after some thinking, they understood what their commander had planned. It didn't matter if the puppets fell, as long as they reached the range of the enemy, they would be finished. With His Majesty on their back, the puppets are immortal. Thinking that the enemy once employed this tactic, they couldn't help but smile. You reap what you sow. Now it's time for you to taste what it feels like to be cheating. Immortal puppets, it's time to show your power. Chapter 3:14 Immortal Army vs. Unlimited Firepower. Under the relentless firepower of the arcane cannons, the puppets continued to advance inch by inch. Over 8 billion puppets used their bodies as a wall, shielding against the rain of bombardment. At first, the soldiers of the Moonlight Empire wore confident smiles, believing their enemy was marching to their death. However, as time passed, they noticed that the enemy didn't diminish in number. As they fell, it seemed another one would come at their back. Is this what the field marshal said? Johnson muttered gloomily. He had long noticed that something was wrong with the enemy. Instead of spreading out and using their numerical advantage, the enemy used the puppets like disposable garbage. This should have been a suicidal move. However, after he noticed the enemy's trump card, Johnson could only conclude that the enemy was stupidly strong. Immortality. It's the indestructible puppets. No matter how foolish the person commanding such an army, it's a genius strategy. Thinking of his army, Johnson couldn't help but clench his fist. Since you want to play this way, then let's play. Immortal Army vs. Unlimited Firepower. Let's see who will be exhausted first. Although he knew that even with various replenishments and treasures, his army couldn't continue to fire the arcane cannon forever. Johnson also knew that the price for such an immortality was not cheap either. A month later, the fight between the immortal puppets and the Moonlight Empire army continued. While the fight continued, the believers of the gods was in the ship, drinking in celebration as victory neared their sight. Ha ha ha, cheers. Soon, that Moonlight Empire will be trampled under the light of His Majesty. TSK, we didn't have to do anything and they are already on the verge of collapsing. Heh, no matter who the enemy is, the winner has already long been decided. Cheers to His Majesty. Cheers. They cheered, chanting the name of the emperor instead of their god. During this time, the influence of Khan already bloomed in their hearts. The belief that they had in their god gradually faded as time passed. Sometimes, their hearts couldn't help but long for the cursed continent, especially living under the light of Emperor Khan. During this month-long war, they witnessed vast and unimaginable means of Emperor Khan. The flow of time seemed to be on a loop, as billions of puppets were destroyed and regenerated every day as if nothing had happened. No matter how fierce the enemy was, under the immortal puppets, it was as fragile as a piece of paper. From a distance of millions of kilometers, they were now only 100,000 kilometers away from the Moonlight Empire. A few more weeks, and they could tear the Moonlight Empire to pieces. Don't be too complacent. we are only fighting some ordinary people, Lut reminded. Lut was the only divine priest who joined this war. Although he didn't have combat power, his support capabilities were top-notch. It can be said that he was an arsenal that could boost an army 1,000 times. Last time, he wasn't much help during the battle because he too was focused on saving his own life. The soldiers under his command were also too busy saving themselves to listen to his commands. Joining this war was so he could avenge himself. Lut couldn't forget the despair of facing the enemy waiting to take his life away. You're too worried, Divine Priest. With His Majesty behind our back, we are invincible. Divine Priest should rest himself so we can quickly guide the lost lambs after we conquer the Moonlight Empire. That's right. What more can they do to us? Kill us? With the guarantee of His Majesty, who can kill them? They are immortal. No matter what tricks the enemy had in hand, it was useless. Oh, I'm just too worried. Lut sighed. Another stupid teammate was in his midst. They were already celebrating the victory that they hadn't even won, spouting ignorant words of invincibility. Although the ability of that emperor is indeed godlike, it's not omnipotent. Who can be so sure that they could be resurrected again after they died? Who can be so sure that the enemy didn't have the ability to invalidate this miraculous ability? Furthermore, had they thought why the seemingly invincible emperor didn't fight with them? Couldn't the Moonlight Empire be hiding a bigger threat that even he was scared of? Too many questions didn't let Lut relax. Looking at the small land surrounded by the vast sea, the tenacious people fighting the seemingly infinite puppets, Lut wondered what mysteries were hidden in it. Moonlight Empire, just what are you? In the Moonlight Outpost, Isabella was processing some documents, coordinating the army like a machine. Although it seemed like only 100 billion were fighting at the front. To support such a force, trillions of people had to work. Isabella was the core of it all, holding these people together so it wouldn't collapse. A month? After surviving for a month, instead of being happy, Isabella frowned a little. Her goal was to buy time. Yet under the suicidal method of the enemy, the distance between them shortened to a mere 100,000 kilometers. Just a few more weeks and the enemy would be within an arm's reach. Tapping her finger on the table, she fell into thought. Now, what should I do? First, the puppets that Maximus left behind were useless. Under the billions of the Immortal army, a mere millions of puppets would be quickly torn apart. The mobility of such puppets is a little lagging, so they would be destroyed the moment they were caught. Those desperate Immortal puppets would devour them at a moment's notice. As for taking them to wipe out those believers who were partying at the back, Isabella held back in doing so. She already investigated that those believers were the ones they killed last time. Seeing them alive and kicking, it's not hard to guess that the Emperor of the Wessel Empire had the capability to resurrect them. Once she touched those believers, the war would escalate. Instead of only the puppets, those mad believers would also join the battle. Even though she could easily wipe them out with immortality, it would only be a waste of time and manpower. While thinking of a solution, a knock came at the door. Come in. Mother. Grandmother. 2x. Asha, Lila, Maya, you three are here. Isabella, who was originally frowning, smiled upon seeing them. How is the chaotic sea? Mother, we didn't find Dad. Asha pouted. The three had come to the chaotic sea to find Maximus. Initially, Asha was confident that with her overpowered luck, finding her father would be easy. However, after years of searching, they found nothing. It seemed that her father was in another dimension where her luck didn't work. Don't worry, you will be able to find him soon, Isabella smiled, patting Asha's head. By the way, how are you? You look tanned, you must have been working hard these years. We're fine, and this is nothing. Finding father is the first priority. We also helped grandmother. Lila shouted, seeing Asha didn't mention her due credit. Duh. Your charm is useless in the sea. What help did you offer? Asha muttered, rolling her eyes. Hey, I cooked your food, washed the dishes, and. Suddenly Lila paused. She just now realized that she was really useless, reduced to a miscellaneous servant. Her overwhelming beauty that transcended dimensions was useless against those manic, chaotic sea beasts. Heh, now you know that you're useless, Asha said haughtily. She had long wanted to suppress this niece of hers. Although she was pretty lucky and was the favorite, it couldn't hide the fact that Lila was more beautiful than her. As a girl, she couldn't accept that there was someone more beautiful than her, even if it was her niece. Seeing her deflated look, she couldn't help but smile. But, Lila muttered, thinking of a rebuttal. You also didn't do anything. Even your luck is useless. We also didn't find grandfather. Lila suddenly thought. At least she helped with the chores, but her Aunt Asha hadn't done anything. Oh, Asha just rolled her eyes at Lila's incompetent fury. Meanwhile, Maya just looked at them blankly. Her aunt and cousin were really a piece of work. During their journey, Maya was like a nanny who needed to arrange everything. From daily training to tasks, objectives, and various exchanges. Without her, the two would probably make the world chaotic even before they find grandfather. Anyway, Mother, what happened to the Empire? It seems that you are at war with someone, Asha asked. Before Maximus disappeared, Asha and the two were already playing on the Arcane continent. Thus, as soon as they received the news of Maximus's disappearance, they set off for the Chaotic Sea. All the news and events in the Empire were unknown to them. If it were not for returning, they wouldn't even know that the Empire was at war. Indeed, we are at war with the Wessel Empire, Isabella sighed. Chapter 3:15 Arcanite Soul Steel. The Wessel Empire. Are they that strong? Asha muttered, not taking the enemy in her eyes. She was already tier 8, possessing a solid foundation and a dimensional physique. For her, a place without an apex sovereign is merely a background board like any other. They're strong. We may even have to run and abandon the Empire in hindsight. Oh? So strong? Asha was a little shocked. Is the enemy so strong that they even have to retreat if they meet? It's the amalgamation of will, with the generation from hundreds of trillions of people. The Emperor of the Wessel Empire is equivalent to an inexhaustible apex sovereign. So that it? Although they had limited knowledge of the amalgamation of will, they knew it was comparable to the essence of law. Facing an enemy that could control an inexhaustible amount of it is really a challenge. Do you want help, Mother? We can also help, Grandmother. Lila volunteered, taking Maya's hand. Although Asha and Lila didn't possess much combat, using their special physique they could bring the enemy down to chaos. Asha, manipulating luck, could bring an empire to the eternal damnation of bad luck. Lila could also quickly dismantle the enemy's military and political power by just showing her face. It's too dangerous. Isabella knew what they were thinking. However, dancing at the tip of the enemy knife is not something she would resort to. Everything be damned as long as her family is safe. How could she disregard their safety just because of unrelated things? Although the Moonlight Empire is also important and sentimental, it's not as important as their life. Then what can we do? We also want to help. Although finding Maximus was the top priority, if there were something they could help with, they would drop their current task and assist. Let me think. Seeing their sincere eyes, Isabella pondered what they could do. Suddenly, she thought of a solution to her earlier problem. Initially, she had a headache at the seemingly infinite puppets and the lack of firepower. Looking at her lucky daughter, the solution seemed to be presented in front of her. Do you know about Arcanite Soul Steel? Of course. This material was quite expensive and in demand. How can I not know it? Arcanite Soul Steel is the main material of the arcane cannon and other weapons that harness the power of the masses to fight across tiers. It's also the primary material that can convert mana into energy used in different alchemies and industries. More importantly, it's one of the materials needed to create any artificial Tier 9 items. It's so rare and versatile that it was one of the main trading resources of those top-tier guilds. Being a fan of money like her brother Lux, Asha basically memorized all the expensive items and resources known throughout the Ethereum realm. After all, she often came across them. If she didn't know her stuff, she might be fooled by some merchant out of her money. Why do you need it, Mother? Don't we have a lot of them? Asha asked doubtfully. Before her father disappeared, he gave them a lot of resources to practice. Among them, Arcanite Soul Steel should be plenty enough for them to play with for hundreds of years. They were used to build those cannons, Isabella muttered helplessly. Isabella had already collected all the Arcanite Soul Steel she could find to make millions of arcane cannons. As for buying them, they were not for sale. Even Denise asked her father for some, but all she received was that it was out of stock. After receiving some experimental materials from Maximus, her father's guild, the Lorekeeper Guild went into a frenzy of experimentation. All kinds of rare resources that could be used were used until there were none left. Thus, the Arcanite Soul Steel, an important material, was quickly depleted. Even now, they were scrambling to find Maximus to buy more of it. As for other Apex sovereigns, they were not close enough to conduct transactions. They could also buy arcane cannons directly. Unfortunately, it was a banned weapon and there were too few in circulation. For many, it's a waste to use Arcanite soul steel to create a weapon for the weak. They would rather use it to arm themselves. Meanwhile, upon hearing that all the Arcanite soul steel was used to make the war cannons, Asha was shocked. The Wessel Empire is so strong? Those materials their father gave should be worth thousands of Moonlight Empire, yet they were used just as defensive weapons? How strong must the enemy be to warrant such measures? How about it? We are barely holding on now. Using these miscellaneous materials is nothing, Isabella said, not caring about the money. Then do you want me to look for some Arcanite soul steel? Asha asked, contemplating the meaning of her mother's words. Yes, we need them fast, maybe a week or even a few days. Although Isabella knew that it was impossible for Asha to find them in such a short amount of time, she still hoped for a miracle. A week? A few days? Asha was somehow speechless, thinking her mother thought she was a god. Is it impossible? With luck on her side, Asha was sure to find even the rarest material once she put her mind to it. However, such a small time frame? It's not something luck can create out of thin air. How about I look for it, grandmother? Lila said, causing silence in the room. You? What? Will you seduce an Apex sovereign to give you a piece? Asha said jokingly. Although it's indeed a possibility, she knew Lila was such a pure witch and would never do such a thing. What are you saying? Don't joke like that. Isabella knocked Asha's head. Although they were already desperate, it hadn't come to the point where her granddaughter needed to sell her body to get by. Bad auntie. Then how are you going to find it? I have an Apex sovereign friend, she should have some. You? An Apex sovereign friend? Why didn't I know? Asha asked doubtfully. She had been with Lila almost all the time, yet she didn't even know she had a connection with some Apex sovereign. It was when I was still a baby, so you didn't know. Sister Lilith took me out to meet her sister, and from time to time, I took my time to play with them. Sister Lilith? So it's them? Isabella muttered. Although Lilith was still busy with training, she still came to them from time to time. They had just returned recently from the Abyss, and the war immediately started, so they didn't have time to reminisce. Although they didn't know much about Lilith's sister, Freya, looking at her granddaughter. Lila should be able to buy some Arcanite soul steel. Alright, then I'll leave the acquisition of the material to you. Leave it to me, grandmother. In the arcane continent, spirit domain. Mesmerizing flowers, undulating mountains, crisscrossing rivers, perfect weather. Looking at the beautiful land filled with a fairy atmosphere, Lila, Asha, and Maya, who had just arrived in the spirit domain, couldn't help but be stunned for a while. Everything in this domain seemed handcrafted to embody the world's beauty. Even the birds and animals were so tame and beautiful that they couldn't help but indulge for a while. I heard that any ugliness is forbidden here, is it true? Asha couldn't help but ask. Yes, Sister Freya wanted everything to be perfect. Thus you can be weak but never be ugly, Lila said confidently. She was able to befriend Freya not only because of Lilith, who had an ambiguous relationship with her grandfather. It was also because of her otherworldly beauty, the perfect embodiment of what everyone perceived as beautiful. As long as they had some mind, all beings would regard her as a perfect being regardless of gender and race. This is also why no one would blame her even if she were naughty, causing chaos wherever she went. Even the enemy's hatred could disappear with just a look at her. This worsened after she awakened her physique. Now, no one even treated her as a human anymore. Whenever she appeared, as long as she didn't hold herself in disguise, some passerby, without enough strength, would kneel at her, worshipping her like a goddess. Emotions such as love, lust and such also disappeared, replaced with pure adoration and admiration. Freya saw her as an ideal model, a beauty that could transcend the spirit and the soul, a hope for advancement that could breach the limits of dimensions. So, ugliness is really banned here. Asha grew speechless. She thought it was some rumor, bashing the spirit domain. Who knew it was the truth? After all, beauty is relative, and for someone to arbitrarily rate them as such was challenging the world. Fortunately, the one who set such a rule was a strong Apex sovereign. Otherwise, this beautiful place would have long been raided. Let's go, I already contacted Sister Lilith. Sister Freya should be free to meet us. An apex sovereign is not someone you can see whenever you want. Even if they were close, Lila needed to notify them in advance if they could meet each other. Fortunately, it seemed that her auntie's luck was in play, coinciding with Sister Freya having nothing to do. Then what are you waiting for?
Let's go.